Okay, I see what you're saying.
Why did
I
it
see
have
what
to
you're
say
saying. I see what
Mason?
you're saying. Okay.
Okay.
But
I'm not
so
saying you have
no,
to answer.
no.
Just that
I
it
want to
wasn't
clarify.
sitting in me.
The way the Gemara is working is that it's not telling me the background of what's the reason. It's sort of giving me a manual. What do you do? Now, part of this manual, without giving any explanation, is that if it dies, what you do is you redeem it. Our Gemara now steps in and says, okay, let's examine that. Is it because you don't need Hamad Varacha? So as the Mishnah didn't give me the background, is it because of Hamad Varacha? Maybe it's because you don't redeem it for other reasons.
We're trying to figure out the Mishnah's
We're trying
reasoning.
to go back to the reasoning.
But if that would be the reasoning, then somebody in the Gemara here would say, so why does it say V'imesu? It should be Mechayim Kavachomer Imesu. If the Mishnah is coming to, the whole thing is, where it's Imesu Yibdu is coming to teach us, according to Reb Shimon, a new concept. That even though this was given to Kocha Mizbeah, it doesn't need Hamad Avarach. So if you want to teach you something like that, if the that's the goal of the Mishnah. Ultimately, that's the Mishnah's goal.
Okay.
You don't have to answer me now. It's Daf Yomi.
The Gemara is going to touch on your point in a minute. The Gemara is going to it's going to say, why didn't the Mishnah say it differently?
Okay.
But you still need to accept that apparently the Mishnah wasn't trying to teach me the din of Hamad Varacha. The Mishnah was telling me what to do, and the Gemara is coming in and saying, "Oh, it must be that that's the opinion." Because that wasn't the intent of this Mishnah to teach me Hamad. The Mishnah.
When it says "V'yotzin lechulim ligazes v'le'ovid," obviously there was a pidyon over there.
Yeah. After the pidyon. Yeah, there's no question that you're doing a pidyon when it's alive. There's no question. The Mishnah says you paid it.
So what would be the chiddush of the Imesu?
That you can do a pidyon even after it died. Because certain times you can't do a pidyon after it dies. You just have to bury it. It's a loss.
But if it's a kavachomer, if mechaim, you could be paid it. So for sure, when it's not alive, you could be paid it. It's a kavachomer.
No, I need Hamad Varacha.
Exactly. When it's alive, you can stand
I can only be paid by Hamad Varacha.
So the whole chiddush of the Mishnah is that you don't need Hamad Varacha.
That's what's coming out over here. Right. That you don't need Hamad. From this law, it's coming out that you don't need Hamad Varacha.
So, but according to Reb Shimon, according to what he's saying over here, Oisa is limute that Balmum Mikar doesn't need Hamad Varacha even Mechayim. Continue.
No. Hamad the translation of Hamad Varacha, when not having Hamad Varacha means that it's dead.
No.
That's the translation of not having Hamad Varacha. I cannot stand it up.
If
it's alive, then I can stand it up.
You don't need to. There's a miyut that says
Okay, so that's a fine point. That's a fine point.
You don't even need it.
Okay. Now the Gemara asks. We just said we're trying to answer that why didn't Rabbi Yehuda Merav say that the Mishnah is Reb Shimon and the Rabbanan? We said because the Rabbanan, we're going to translate the Rabbanan according to Rish Lakish. Rish Lakish says that an animal that's designated as a sacrifice does not require. Rish Lakish holds an animal that's designated as a sacrifice does not require Hamad Varacha, but Kachi Bedek Bais does require Hamad Varacha. Oh, so now we're going to say it's the opposite. So we're going to say that this animal goes under the category of Bedek Bais. And so therefore, you're going to need Hamad Varacha, and you're not going to be able to do that. So that's why it's only Reb Shimon's opinion. It's not the opinion of the rabbis. It's only Reb Shimon. The Gemara says, but the Mishnah can't fit with the Rabbanan, the Ktani Seifa, because it says in the end of the Mishnah, V'mesu yikpru. The end of the Mishnah says that if the mum came later and it was a regular sacrifice, you have to bury it. Who would hold that you have to bury a regular sacrifice and you can't redeem it? That could only be Reb Shimon's opinion, not the Rabbanon's opinion, because the Rabbanon hold that you can redeem a sacrifice, according to Rish Lakish. Umar says, "Mimai, how do you know that? The Hamesu Yikbru Mishum de Boi Hamadavaracha, who says that it's because you need to stand it up, and that's why you need to bury it, and that would only be Reb Shimon's opinion. Dilma Mishum de Ein Paidin Esakachin Lachin Leklavenu. There's another issue here. Maybe the reason why you have to bury this animal that died, the sacrifice, and you can't redeem it, is not because you need to stand it up. Maybe it's because we don't redeem sacrifices to be fed to dogs. We don't think that that's respectful. But it doesn't have to do with Hamad Varach. So the Gemara says, and this is what I mentioned, Reb Chaim, Imkain, Amri, Imkain, Nisni Nasu Treifa Yikbru. If we're trying to teach just that one detail, that you can't redeem an animal to feed it to dogs, then that halach I could have taught differently. That halach I could have said, if the animal becomes a treifa, then you can't redeem it. Why? Because you're not allowed to eat it. What are you going to do with it? You're going to treifa, you give it to the dog. So it must be the fact that it didn't say it. It's because it's coming to tell me that you're not allowed to redeem it because you need to stand it up. If you need to stand it up, then it can't be. If you need to stand it up, then it must be that katshe mizbeach need hamadavaracha. Okay. Iba Yisema, another pshat. La ilam Rav ka Rabbi Yechanan tzvili. Really, Rav holds like Rabbi Yechanan. And in other words, that in Mesu Yiftu, that you can redeem an animal that's katshe bedek Bais, is the opinion of the Rabbanan as well. However, however, we're going to have to edit the words of Rav and Rabbi Yehuda. That Rav and Rabbi Yehuda says the name of Rav. That our Mishnah that says you're allowed to redeem it after it dies. We said that was the opinion of Reb Shimon. According to Rabbi Yochanan, that's also the opinion of the Rabbanan as well, that you're allowed to redeem it. That katshe bedek Bais. You should be allowed to redeem. So why does he just say it's the opinion of Reb Shimon? He says no. He said it's the opinion of Reb Shimon and those that argue with him. Together.
So there is no argument according to this answer.
That last, in this one point, there's no argument. This Levi argued and okay.
But in the famous Machlekes of Shimon Rabbanan, there's no argument on this point, according to this thing.
An a balmum meikare. Okay. Okay, let's see the next Gemara. Let's say this we enter. Excuse me. we go into the second part of the Mishnah now. The different type of animal. This is a real sacrifice, and it got a mum later. So we say that now. What's the halachas here? Here it's considered sanctified. It's exempt from bechira. It's exempt from giving matanis. If it has an offspring, or if you slaughtered this animal, even after it's redeemed, it's exempt from these halachas because it's considered a sacrifice. Gemara says, "Minahani mili." How do you know that this is true. The Tana Rabbanan, because we have a brisa. Okay, these are psukim that are discussing, according to the Gemara, Psuli HaMikdashim. An animal that was a sacrifice that gets a blemish. So you redeem it, and the pasuk says that the pasuk doesn't actually spell that out, that it's an animal with a blemish. The pasuk doesn't spell it out that it's Psuli HaMikdashim, but the Sifri says that, why do you need to tell me that this animal, if you want it, if you desire meat, that you can eat it anywhere you want, just like a deer and a gazelle? Why do you have to repeat that? You said that already. It's coming to tell me Psuli HaMikdashim, that you're allowed to slaughter and eat them like a deer. Just like you can slaughter a deer, it's not brought to the temple. Also, Psuli HaMikdashim are not brought to the temple. So we're going through that original brisa of Psuli HaMikdashim. What's the law of an Psuli HaMikdashim? Means a sacrifice that became blemished and isn't eligible anymore. So the pasuk says tzvi, that it's like a deer. Ma tzvi patim min hamacher, just like a deer. If a deer has an offspring, a firstborn offspring, it's not a sacrifice. Also, if an animal that's sanctified, that gets a blemish, has an offspring, its offspring isn't a firstborn offspring, is not considered bechar. This is clearly kedushas mizbeach. This was designated as a sacrifice, and it got a mum later. On your way to the temple, it got a cut, and it has an offspring. That offspring is not a bechar. You've only excluded it from bechar because you said tzvi. You didn't exclude it from matanis. Now, even though the truth is that by bechar it says bechar chavitzeincha, your cattle and your sheep. By matanis it says sharim seh. So it also excluded it already from tzvi. The Gemara doesn't get into that right here. The Gemara says, give me another source from matanis, even though tzvi is just as good. So it says, okay, you want to exclude that? Talmud Leimer Ayel. Matanis means the Zroya L'chayayim and the Keva, which are given to the Kohen. Every time you slaughter an animal that's not a sacrifice, you have to give certain parts of it to the Kohen. The foreleg, the jaw, and the stomach. Abamosim. Ma Ayel Patim Men HaMacher, just like this gazelle, it doesn't have a bechar, the firstborn is not a bechar, and patim min hamatanis. Psuli HaMikdashim p'turim min hamacher min hamatanis. Also, a sacrifice that has a blemish. When you slaughter it, you don't give the gifts to the kohen. You get to eat the whole thing. Imatzvi ayal chelban mutter. Psuli HaMikdashim chelban mutter. Those are wild animals. The chelev is permissible. Maybe when I have a sacrifice animal, a little sheep that I would have brought as a sacrifice, but it got a cut, and now I can't because it has a blemish. Maybe you could eat the chelev off that sheep, because the pasuk compares it to a gazelle and a deer. Talmud Leimar ach chalak. It says, the pasuk starts off with ach kash. Yeah, ach kash yochel svivas ayel came to clean. Does it say? So you should eat it, but the ach is a exclusion. So it says that it's only for certain things, not for the comparison. Doesn't fully compare it for chelev that you should be allowed to eat the fats.
It's the same ach by these simone kashrus. There it says only these animals are non-kosher that don't have the one siman not there. That's whenever you have the ach, that's what we learn now. It's a specific, only this. Yeah.
Right. The Gemara does that with ach.
Ach, that's what I'm saying, yeah.
Right.
And you thought ach is just ach. Oh, here's a chassid.
But by Noach, so it says that he got kicked or bitten or something. So it says, Vayishar ach Noach. So I think one of the ways of learning what Rashi's saying over there is that ach means that he said ouch. Ach, because the ch is in English, by the way, the gh in night, in light, in right is all a ch. Originally, nacht, recht,
like
licht.
the way German.
It's a German. It's a
It's
German
fast.
ch. It became silent in English. Okay, Amar Mar. Master said, I have to stop here. Sorry.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know what to do there.
This day needs a review. That's all.